Welcome to Parallel Universe,
a series where we explore different ways to tackle the same audio challenge.
Today's challenge, mixing a lead vocal.
One song, two completely different approaches.
I will be using Topline Vocal Suite, a fully native, all-in-one tool built for fast production.
I'm going to use UAD-2 plugins running on Apollo hardware, so we're talking Studer, Neve, Fairchild, and many more.
Now, we're not here to crown a winner.
Because there's not one right way to mix vocals.
So whether you're Team Native
or Team DSP, the goal is the same: great sound.
All right, let's dive in. Now, before we get started, I feel like I have to say a quick word about approaching mixing in general. Before you even think about mixing, your listening environment is everything. A well-tuned room with properly placed speakers helps you make confident, accurate decisions. If your space isn't ideal, and most aren't, room correction tools like SonarWorks Sound ID Reference can really help, and they happen to work seamlessly with the Apollo X-Gen 2 interfaces. And if you're not working with speakers, SonarWorks Sound ID Reference has profiles for headphones too. I'm using the Headphone 2s for this session because I know how well they translate, but whatever you use, the key is trusting your space and your gear to help you make the right decisions. Okay, so some time has passed and I've had a chance to get really acquainted with this vocal, and I've given it a mix. So let's solo the vocals and remove Topline from the lead, background, and sends so you can hear the full effect. Once you get a sense of how much Topline has contributed to the overall sound, we'll then dive into the individual instances and break down the mixing in general.
So go ahead and throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it.
So the first thing I tackled was pitch correction. I used Topline Key Finder to automatically detect the key, and I sent that right into Topline. From there, I turned on the tuner and kept it relatively subtle with speed and depth both set to lowish values to preserve the natural vibe of the vocal. I don't want robotic tuning, just a little polish.
But the torture makes me tougher. The bleeding makes me better. The scarring makes me stronger, keeps me harder, takes me higher.
Now it's time for the channel strip. I went with the tube preamp model to give the vocal some vintage warmth. Then I dialed in some gentle saturation with the color and saturate knobs and selected the vintage tone setting for that slightly dark, classic analog flavor. That's what I felt suited the track. Let's hear the before and afters of just this category of processing. So we'll keep the tuning, but we're not going to have any time-based effects, just everything in this portion of Topline Vocal Suite.
So go ahead and throw your punches.
Okay, next is compression, which is handled with the focused setting. This one's perfect for modern vocals that need to sit up front without feeling squashed. I also used some de-esser to tame the S's and a bit of the gate to keep the breaths under control. Let's hear how that sounds with the processing from the preamp upstream, including the compression and de-essing stuff too.
Don't slow it down, knock me to the floor, kick me while I'm on the ground.
Okay, so finally, I used the full range EQ style and made a slight low mid cut and added some high end sheen. I also brought in a little bit of the air control to add sparkle without harshness, one of my favorite features of this plugin. So let's hear that on and off with everything else that came before.
But the torture makes me tougher. The bleeding makes me better.
Okay. So now it's time to give the vocal some space. I headed to the modulation, delay, and reverb section And I used a blend of effects to create depth and movement, which I really thought this vocal needed. You'll notice I opted against using any modulation since I didn't feel like it would benefit the vibe of the track, but if you want to add chorus and flanging and stuff, that's what that section is for. So for delay, I went with a digital delay, timed to a quarter note with a wide stereo spread, and I made some subtle modulation on the repeats. This helped give it rhythm and space without things getting too messy. Now on the reverb side, I use the ambient style for a tight studio style tail. It's super clean and it keeps the vocal forward in the mix. I also kept the pre-delay short and the modulation at 0 for now, just enough to sit the vocal in a 3D space. Let's hear the sum of the vocal effects that we talked about earlier, plus these new time-based effects. I'm also going to turn the FX duck off for now. Let's take a listen.
So go ahead and throw your punches.
Now, to keep the mix clean, I use the FX duck knob so that the delay and reverb tuck out of the way while the vocal is playing and then blooms back in the gaps. This would be a really tough thing to set up with sends and whatnot, but with one knob here, it's really easy. So let's turn FX duck on and off with our reverb and delay more or less printed. Listen to how much more intelligibility we're afforded when the FX suppress to make way for the vocalist. I'll bring it on and off. Take a listen.
So go ahead and throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it.
I should also mention that I have Topline on the background vocals using a pretty similar chain that I have on my main vocal that I've been going through with you. And I also have two different reverb algorithms, one chamber and plate, from Topline, each on a bus to lift things even more. I'm going to go to those sends and I'll turn them on and off in the mix so you can hear what they're contributing to the overall sound.
But the torture makes me tougher. The bleeding makes me better. The scarring makes me stronger. Keeps me harder, takes me higher.
So that is my full vocal chain just using Topline Vocal Suite. Everything you need from tuning, saturation, dynamics, EQ, and time-based effects all in one plugin. I think it sounds amazing, and it's just designed to keep your workflow fast and creative.
So go ahead and throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it. So go ahead and throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it.
Let's see what Drew's up to.
That sounds awesome, Geoff. Let's check out my UAD-2 session. So let me walk you through where I landed using UAD-2 plugins running on Apollo hardware. If we look at the mix window, you'll notice that we have 4 lead vocals and 5 background vocals. The 4 lead vocals actually share the same insert chain, and the backup vocals actually have almost the same chain with one subtle modification that I'll show you in a minute. And then I have 3 time-based send and return effects, and there's actually some really cool stuff going on there that I definitely want to show you. But before we do any of that, let me just play you the chorus of the song so that you can get an idea of where I landed. Let's check it out.
So go ahead and throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it.
So it is a super modern, dense mix, and I really like where I ended up with my processing. So let me walk you through this lead vocal chain. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Sony Dynamic EQ. I have 2 bands going. One is an harshness controller in the upper mids, and the other one is taming the super top end a little bit. And then following that is the Studer A800. I've got it set to GP9. This is a fairly modern tape formulation, but I am running it at 15 inches per second, and you'll notice no input, no output changes, so it's going to be fairly subtle here. Following that is the UAD 610A. I'm using this for a little bit of level compensated saturation. That's why the output control is down a little bit. And then you'll notice that I have the high frequency shelf up to +3. I really like this silky top end. And then after that is the 1084 doing all of my usual stuff. A high pass at 70, little boost at 220, little cut at 700, pretty standard vocal processing for me. And then after that is the Fairchild 670. You've seen me use this before. I'm using my Drew vocal preset. The headroom screw is cranked up clockwise and gives me maximum coloration. And I've got my time constants set to the fastest. And this is not doing a lot, but it is my vintage color and first stage of compression. Following that is the distressor. This is my modern grab and hold that's going to help it park in the mix. And then lastly is the trusty UAD Precision de-esser. So this is the chain for the lead vocal. So let me start off by soloing it and turning all of this off so we hear the raw vocal sound. And then we'll turn the processing on and do an A/B with the music.
But the torture makes me tougher. The bleeding makes me better. The scarring makes me stronger. Keeps me harder, takes me higher. But the torture makes me tougher. The bleeding makes me better. The scarring makes me stronger. Keeps me harder, takes me higher.
Okay, so let me walk you through the background vocal chain. It's very similar to the lead vocal, but with some distinct differences. So first up is the Sony Dynamic EQ. The top end is exactly the same. I've just added a low band to remove some low end. Background vocals definitely don't need as much bottom end. In fact, it just muddies them up. And the Studer is pretty much identical, no changes to discuss there. 610 is the same, but you'll notice I've done an additional low frequency reduction there, again, to clarify the bottom end. And then here's something cool. I've replaced my 1084 with A-type, and you'll notice that I've got the low band here pulled out. Again, further reducing the bottom end and to clarify it. And then after that is the 670. Not a lot of change there. In fact, no change there. And the distressor is basically the same, and so is the de-esser. So let me turn all of that off, and let's go ahead and listen to these vocals soloed, raw, and then we'll put the processing on and keep it soloed. Check it out.
Throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it.
Okay, so now let's hear that same A/B, but this time in context.
Throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it.
Okay, so on to the time-based effects. So the first effect I want to talk about is capital chambers. And I'm doing something interesting here, and I'm going to sidechain the effect using the lead vocal and the API 2500. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you look up here in the sidechain input on the capital chambers channel, you'll notice that the lead vocal is feeding that. And then the API is picking that up so that whenever he sings, the reverb is ducked. And then when he stops singing, the reverb is allowed to bloom. So let me play that for you. I'm gonna solo the vocal. We're gonna start raw, and then I'm gonna add the chamber.
Wish I was bulletproof. Sadly, I'm only human, vulnerable to you wicked sticks and stones.
So you'll notice that API 2500 is kicking in every time he sings and then letting go when he stops. Let me turn that off, and I want you to notice how much more reverb there is all of the time. Check it out.
Wish I was bulletproof. Sadly, I'm only human, vulnerable to you wicked sticks and stones.
So that API is getting the reverb out of the way and letting the vocal shine, and then it blooms afterwards. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's hear this reverb in context.
Wish I was bulletproof. Sadly, I'm only human, vulnerable.
All right, so next up is the AMS DMX at its default setting. And I've put A-type after it to add a little bit of sparkle. So let me mute the chamber and we'll listen to the raw vocal and then we'll add in the AMS.
Wish I was bulletproof. Sadly, I'm only human, vulnerable.
So the AMS is a pretty cool doubler on its own, but adding A-type really adds some excitement. Let me turn A-type off and we can hear what it's adding.
Wish I was bulletproof. Sadly, I'm only human, vulnerable.
All right, let's listen to that in context.
Wish I was bulletproof. Sadly, I'm only human, vulnerable.
So that's adding a lot of width. And let's bring our chamber back in to get the depth happening.
Wish I was bulletproof. Sadly, I'm only human, vulnerable.
So that's giving us a really three-dimensional vocal where we have sides and front to back depth. Okay, so I have one more effect for you. It's the BX20. It's a really cool spring reverb, but it is known to be a little bit dark. So I've got a couple of tricks for you. Number one, I've got A-type after it in air mode. And secondly, I've got the UA-176 at the end of the chain, adding a little bit of compression to keep it present in the mix. The other thing I have going is I have some automation going. I only want this to come in at certain points in the song. So let me turn on Capital Chambers, AMS, and now the BX20. And I want you to listen how I've automated it so that it only comes in to make certain lines bloom. Check it out.
Wish I was bulletproof. Sadly, I'm only human, vulnerable to you wicked sticks and stones. But the torture makes me tougher. The bleeding makes me better. The scarring makes me stronger.
So that's a really cool way of sort of elongating lines and adding depth and dimension and interest in your mix. So let's hear that again in context. I'm going to turn off the background vocals as well.
Wish I was bulletproof. Sadly, I'm only human, vulnerable to you wicked sticks and stones. But the torture makes me tougher. The bleeding makes me better. The scarring makes me stronger. Keeps me harder, takes me higher.
Pretty cool stuff, huh?
So go ahead and throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it. So go ahead and throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it. So go ahead and throw your punches. The truth is I do realize that I like it.
Two approaches, one song. What did you think?
Does the streamlined Topline Suite get you there?
Or do you prefer the customizable UAD-2 signal path?
Let us know in the comments.
And tell us what challenge we should tackle next.
Right here in Parallel Universe.